now because that's kind of my jam.
I know.
So
Let's see it happen.
if you haven't tuned into us before, we're the sci-fi writers who play old school D&D, and right now we're kind of trucking through things with James Ward. Um, I'm Walt Roblard, and I pretend to write stuff. But we have real writers on the podcast. Number one, J.R. Hanley.
I mean, real. I don't know about that. I just clank on keyboards like a monkey, and hopefully Jason likes it.
Right. And then, speaking of Jason, we have Jason's writing partner and the co-creator of the Galaxy's Edge universe, Nick Prometheus Cole.
That's me
Right
in
on.
the house.
So I was going to start sketching up probably. I was going to start sketching up the Cavalier of the Day, which is JR's character.
Yeah.
He started off as a fighter, but now we've seen him progress as a Cavalier. So kind of interesting to see how that's going to work. Um, what what did you guys think of? Whoa, this is doing some freakiness. What did you guys think of the whole Cavalier experience so far?
Well, first, the thing I noticed was that I switched from using the dice roller on roll 20, which always was giving me like super low numbers no matter what dice I rolled, to just rolling them myself. And won some, missed some, but at least it seemed more fair. So that was a nice change.
Right on.
I like paladins. I normally play paladins, straight fighters, thieves, or assassins. I don't like running magic users because I like to be more involved in stuff like that. I think my highest level character I ever played when I was a kid was like a sixth or seventh level cleric that got assassinated at the very end of Temple of Elemental Evil.
Oh God.
I know. There's like an assassin, like Ned Flanders, his name is something like that, and the DM can come out and assassinate one character who's looted the temple, and I got it, man. And I failed resurrection. It was
Oh
just not
God.
my day, and I even cried. I was like 14, and I cried, and then everybody laughed at me, and I swore to join the army and come back to make them pay.
I'll show them.
I'll show them. I'll become tough.
I'll
But
learn the army chop.
yeah, I'll learn. And then I cried in the army. But don't we all late at night when Fire Guard starts?
Oh God.
Oh God.
So I played a Cavalier once because the Dungeons and Dragons show had just come out, and so they had the Cavalier.
You talking about the cartoon?
Yeah,
Oh,
and the
that's good. I
Cavalier was
watched that.
the Cavalier and the Barbarian and the Acrobat were new classes that none of us had played from the original edition. So wanted to play the Cavalier. That looked cool. And the DM was really hard on me. Like I was saying, I busted out a Cavalier by like second level, but I kept playing that character, and then he became a druid assassin, and then he assassinated a 12th level priest by rolling a 20 and a double O in
Damn.
the same rolls, and that's what it took. Like, and then I threw his body into a neotug, and I escaped. And like, I'll pull that character out. Like, if anybody ever like says, "Hey, I'm running just a rando game," I still have that character, and I'll pull him out and play him. And he's like my most fated, cursed, just wacky character that just keeps on surviving. But going back to the Cavalier, I really dig the Cavalier class. It's a fun class that you kind of start off super weak, but like as you get up, you get a bunch of stuff, and it definitely brings in sort of a bigger campaign arc element instead of just being a murder hobo, because a Cavalier can't be a murder hobo. So I
Right.
like Cavaliers. They're cool.
So I've got to figure out how this. Right now, the plan is to take the tents that we got when we found the bag of holding, and use those and set those pavilions up outside of town, and basically have people watching our horses so the trolls stop eating them.
Yeah.
And so that was the plan originally. But then the dice came in my favor when I was rolling with Andrew. He helped me convert my character. So basically, we re-rolled everything from the base that I had for level 1, and we just rolled every advance based on XP. So like all of the previous advancement, I just converted. And when we rolled that for the number of retainers for like men at arms and the armiger, the dice were kind. So I was like, we gotta maybe start incorporating them in the fight. But that means we gotta share the loot with them too. So it's yeah.
Yeah, you get to keep your horses. You're not paying 500 per horse, but at the same time, you're still getting whacked on.
Well, not if we leave them outside to just basically be like our Uber. But
You notice, like, did you notice the little tidbit James said today about the trolls?
oh, what's that?
They're two-headed trolls.
Oh
Right.
yeah, yeah, and there were some shamans involved, I think.
Yeah, he's all, oh, nobody, those two-headed trolls keep eating your horse. I'm all, two-headed trolls.
When did they
I
get
thought
the
they were
extra
just
head?
trolls.
Yeah, the one-headed trolls are bad enough.
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
want to, because I was infantry and I make fun of the cav all the time. It's like part of when they issue you the blue cord. It's like one of the 12th commandment. It's like thou shalt mock the cavalry. It's like it's the unwritten rule. You guys were both grunts.
Yeah.
And so Walt has had no end of pleasure, but like, how's that mounted life treating you? So now I have a lance, but I see a lot of the D&D where they're like, oh, I'm carrying this lance with me and using it. I'm like, that thing is tall. Like I come at it from it as a historian. Like I studied history in college,
Right.
and I'm seeing some of these weapons, and I realize it's ridiculous. I'm carrying so much garbage, like I would not be able to move. I'd need like a team of horses to just probably carry this plate, right? But I want to
they-
try the mounted combat to test the lance.
Yeah, they've done studies on knights, like and they turn out to be surprisingly agile. And it's like anything. Like when they looked at 50-year-old garbage men in New York, they found that those dudes could outwork young guys. And it's just because if you live it, like that's what you're supposed to train in your plate carrier. If you live it, when it comes showtime, it's not really that hard. But if you were like a lazy knight and you just, you just engaged in foppery the entire time, and then suddenly it was just time to go out like, hey, there's a troll outside.
I love foppery.
Yeah. You better get on your armor. Well, like that was a bad day for you if you hadn't been training in that. But like, I think that's what makes in King Arthur, that's what makes Lancelot such a badass. Because he's the guy he's the one that's dedicated to the combat, and that they all are, but he seems to be the most martial of ones. So my guess is like that wearing that armor is not an uncomfortable thing to you.
Well, they've actually they did it on the History Channel back when they actually had history stuff on the History Channel before it became all weird.
Right.
But they actually did a modern jousting thing, and they like basically took people with very little experience and they taught them to be jousters.
Yeah.
And they did a competition, and then they had as part of that to show how flexible they could be. Like they were running around in this stuff, but it's just the number of weapons everyone carries, and all of that added together is probably way more than they would have. They would have had a baggage train.
Yeah. And then as far as the mounted combat, like I would guess like you're gonna have to go looking for that because we're in a dungeon, and I just don't see James giving you that opportunity.
Well, if we get the trolls, maybe we can, but
yeah, that'd be cool. But the cool thing about the lance is it uses the wonderful effect of relativistic force. And I would imagine getting hit by a lance square on, even with armor, is just a great way to break your breastbone.
Yes.
Especially when you actually look at like stuff like the people who did like jousting and stuff like that, and,
yeah,
or knights who led charges.
Right, a war lance.
They had that war lance is twice as heavy as the one that they did in the lists.
Yeah,
but on top of that, the fact that when they got in full armor and then had to get on a horse, they had a whole winch and pulley system that would mount the knight onto the horse.
Yeah,
the majority of the time they couldn't get on and off by themselves. It was really crazy.
Yeah, see,
I thought they've disproven some of that, like because they have horses able to, and there's a guy that tested with the old manuals. A lot of the HEMA community has been harping on that lately, and they're showing them being like doing flips and stuff in their plate.
Yeah, the what do you call it? The mobility was called into question, and there was a whole series of studies done where people rolling around and stuff like that in armor to show how mobile it was, especially the stuff made in Italy just before the Renaissance. Incredibly detailed, incredibly mobile, but you also have to remember you're talking climbing into a stirrup with over 100 pounds of metal on you, and you couldn't, while you could roll and tumble, a lot of times you couldn't get your foot all the way into the stirrup. So they had a step sometimes, or sometimes they had like this little portable ladder system that they would bring on. But like some guys in full plate, they weren't used to fighting in it, so they had like a winch and pulley system.
Yeah. But when they gave a guy a two-handed sword and then they got him into the horse, they didn't even sharpen the blade of that two-handed sword.
No, it's just a piece of rebar.
That guy just went around basically just going, "You're done" to people. Because you're above, the horse is scary. I mean, like, if you put an armored knight with a big chunk of steel on, they can actually get down and hit people on the ground. Like, at that time period, you're fairly invincible.
And that's where the flail came in too.
Yeah.
I like the flail and I like the sword and shield. Like, I just like the shield combo for some reason.
But that flail was an answer to hitting people on the move on horseback through villages.
Yeah.
Because what was happening was with a horseman's mace, especially to make it light enough to recover easily without hitting the horse on a rebound, they were making the shafts with wood. And what do you call it? It just wasn't doing the kind of damage that they wanted it to. So they took that handle and they put like the same big metal balls on chains, and the force, centrifugal force at the end of that when they swung it was just brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was dope. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, JR, so far, this guy for you has been like a real game changer, huh?
It has, mostly because it started changing like how I was thinking about things. Like, instead of like, that's one of the things James got on me on the beginning when I was talking to, like, the character was dead the first time he killed me in this session, and I was waiting to be revived, and Aiden had died, and Dean had died as well, and I was like, say, hey, I've got this gear in my bag, come take it, and he's like, no, you can't do that, that's metagaming. And so I'm trying to like put myself in the character's head. I mean, it's a good writing exercise too, to start thinking like you're somebody else, and you do to a point, but this is a lot more like laser focused on that kind of thing.
Right on.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun, and you were right. Something about holding the real dice in my hand is way better than the dice roller.
Well, it's like Stan Lee used to say, the guy who kind of like catapulted Marvel Comics, him and Jack Kirby. He's like, when the whole digital comic book thing came around, he was at a Comic-Con and somebody interviewed him and said, hey, digital comics are great, but it's kind of like porn on the internet. Boobs are good to look at on screen, but they're much better in your hand.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
No, it's true, JR, they are. But you would know that because you're Cav now.
I will never live that down. I might have to take my blue cord out and just like rub it just to make sure it's still there and hasn't like shrunk away.
You notice how he's talking about rubbing and shrinking now?
That's so Cav.
Wow. All right. So, but yeah, I have liked it. It's been fun. I do want to do more exploring the above ground world. Like the dungeon crawl is fun, but something about like is seeing the whole world. And my experience before so my oldest was at a residential facility briefly, and they started a homebrew game for him there. He really got into it, and my experience up until that point with gaming for the most part was like Elder Scrolls, so like Morrowind, Skyrim.
Oh yeah.
All the games. So I want James just wants to have one of the NPCs be like, I used to be an adventurer until I took an arrow to the knee.
To the knee.
But it's different because like everything was so visual, so you just want to like ride around and just look for random things to kill as you just look, like to see what's there. And sort of see what you stumble onto, as opposed to like we're just going to keep going back to these dungeons.
Yeah.
So I do want I like the idea where like you've got the quest in the mountains to go clear this land so you can build this temple and all that kind of stuff, just because it's different.
Yeah, and you got to remember, like, this whole dungeon that James is like basically recreating is the original like test ground for the original Dungeons and Dragons that Gary Gygax developed. And so Walt and I jumped on for about 15 minutes yesterday with Jim, and because I wanted to pop my thief up a level, and I'm like, hey, can you give me a quick mission to do? And then I don't, because like my calculator is having a hard time splitting the levels. And I'm like, this would make my day a lot easier. He's like, okay, I'll do that. And then Walt jumped in. So we went into the graveyard in Greyhawk, and we got into like a really cool little adventure there. And it's so there's fun things to do, but like even now, like he's kind of laid out like, remember that black tower that we found with the dragon on top?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there was the pond. Then there was a lake he talked about too. So I like sometimes when you play with DMs, it's other DMs, it can be very on the rails and everything like that. And like I think some of the criticisms people will use about James, if you read things, they'll say, "Oh, he doesn't really do campaign." Well, the guy's run tournament dungeons for the last 30 years. That's kind of all where he's at. And what I see him now doing is very slowly beginning to get back into campaign mode. That's why he's throwing you guys these things like if you go to the mountains and things like that. But like I said, this is a guy who's run tournament games for, and there's no campaign in a tournament game. You're just getting points or surviving or just playing D&D in a crowded hall with 5,000 other smelly people. So I see him actually, like in your characters, giving you guys campaign arcs to an extent. It definitely seems like we're going to have some problems with the minions of Set and those kind of guys. He's just giving me a hard time with my sword, but who cares?
Dude, I hate your sword, man.
I do too, but look how helpful it is.
Like I don't know.
Like
I had to give away the temple of
I know.
Temple,
but that was going to cost you nothing but problems.
Well, I had already given it away, so the temple had already taken it from me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So
well, no, it was yours though.
No, I gave it to the temple to give back to them in exchange for my Kopesh.
Okay. Well, then how did I get it?
Because the temple, according to the dungeon master, so saith he, said it was mine to dictate what happened to.
Ooh, baby.
And so I felt like trading the not robbing the graves.
Yeah.
Was probably okay.
I think you just got to find some heresy.
Yeah, the other thing too is that you're also dealing with 1E or like a 1E 2E hybrid,
right.
which was more of that Dungeons and Dragons from an era where you're still kind of transitioning away from that tabletop war game. So a lot of it was centered on that kind of deal.
Yeah, it was just numbers and math, but also it was the things that you did or what you became.
Yes.
Which I think is the way to do it, as opposed to what I see in 5e now, which is, before you even do anything, you've got your 10-page bio written out.
Oh God.
And your character happens to be a half god, half vampire.
So
and then you die 10 minutes into the session.
So do either of you guys play any of the video game RPGs? I don't have a lot of time now, but
totally.
Do you remember Fable?
Fable's like light. I mean, I would say if you want to get heavy into RPGs, you play JRPGs, Japanese RPGs.
Oh yeah.
But I just like anything by Bethesda is good enough for me.
Well, the reason I mentioned that is in the original, when they switched to the third person view, it just made me too dizzy. I had to stop playing. Yeah. But in the original one that came out, like you could walk around the town and you do things, and when you started doing more and more evil things, you get to like the bugs that would fly around you, and
that was cool.
The Linus thing going on. And what struck me the funniest is you could kick the chickens for extra evil. Is eventually you would get so evil you'd have horns and everybody would want to attack you on sight, but then you could just walk to a nearby temple, donate a crap ton of gold, tithe your sin away. And I keep thinking you're known by your deeds, and I think that has merit, because that's sort of why knights sometimes win on these. Like that's why they went to the Holy Land, because they wanted to be seen as.
But see, it's the difference, not to get all political, and that's when Jason says I'm getting political. It's the difference in there are people that believe that what you do is what you are, and then there are people that believe in this new thing that you can just do words and that's what you are, and everybody you can kind of do nothing and people have to just respect you because you've used magic words. And that's not really how it works. Walt can't use that on the mat at his dojo. He can't just say, oh, you've all got to, respect me because I'm this level of trainer. He has to at the same time be able to back up that level of trainer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that comes through 1,000 hours of getting good at something. And so I think that's why old D&D is the best. Is you had to pound out 1,000 hours, or whatever it was, adventures and everything. You had to survive modules, and I mean, when I was a kid, you just got killed left and right.
Oh yeah.
You just, it was make a new character maybe every couple of weeks. And you're like, but I really liked my paladin. Nah, make a new character, you crying little kid. And I played with all college kids, because that's who knew D&D, your cousin and older college kids. And they delighted in chopping you to pieces with the Minotaur, and you're just like, oh man, I had big plans for that character. I was going to build a keep, and you didn't even make it past second level. So, yeah. So I mean, that's, and maybe, maybe I'm just becoming a crabby old man yelling at clouds, but that's what I think people need more of is the investment in actually, there's been a lot of moments in this game so far where James is kind of a killer DM. We do get combat. We've been I would say we're getting a good amount of combat, some sessions better than others, but a lot of his stuff is brain puzzles or figure it out or you're dead. And there's a moment of faith where you can ask all the questions you want of James about what you're about to do, but at the end of the day you have to stick your head in the green gaseous cloud.
That's never happened to us.
Yeah. It's just or the first time, what was it, Rothman walked into a gelatinous cube. It's just, and you learn. Now we look up and down and all around, and we toss dust, and we're throwing coins. We're like a bunch of weird schizophrenics walking through a dungeon.
But as Mel Gibson taught us, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And that, but compare that to 5e, where everybody has superpowers now, and that's kind of what I hate about modern society is as opposed to the murder hobo thing, where you're just think about the average dungeoneer is just regular leg infantry, pack on his back. He's got a weapon. Hopefully he works with his buddies for skills, and they are out there to accomplish the mission. To what every game can be now, which is everybody's a special superhero. Yeah. And you have you're sensing and you're doing these things, but you never get that weird James Ward moment of faith where you literally have to do the most basic. Well, the whole premise of when we play tabletop games in its purest form is dice and choices. And as much as you want to manipulate that, there's a moment where you do just have to make a save versus death. Yeah. And that sucks when you're 8th level, right? Like we did today. But the rush that you get when you make it is similar to drugs and or gambling. It's kind of fun.
Not that we would know about any of that because we're good old boys.
Yeah, we're good old boys. But if you're playing, and that's what the thing I've heard about 50 is a lot of people say there's no stakes. You're always going to get an award. You're always going to walk away. So I mean, I've only played it once, and I didn't find it really all that interesting. Your mileage may vary, but death and danger in life being a contact sport is kind of fun. This is 3 guys who joined the military. I'm sure all of us had other options to stay home and not do dangerous things, but we did.
And look what happened.
Yeah, we're here talking about D&D at 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
So, yeah, and, editing things and drawing things. I call Walt's new reviews Tears of Blood, or How I Learned to Take It Like a Man.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. I didn't think I was that harsh.
No, I'm just messing around. I embellish. It's what I do.
Yeah. So I think it's a good campaign. I think it's growing. It's fun. I like helping James, bring this. The main thing is I've been working with James for 2 years now, and he's been very afraid of D&D because I think he's had some bad experiences. But now I see him kind of really getting back into it and embracing it. And I want him to do that because at the end of the day, it's the biggest game in the world as far as tabletop is.
Yeah, and we talked about this off show, but I'm just going to put it out there. So we actually have gotten, because I've started doing the show, and I tweeted Elon Musk, we're trying to get him to come on and game with us. So I'm trying to get people to like and do the things so it gets enough traction that he actually sees it. And so because of that, I started having a lot of people following me that are into like the gaming side of things, whereas before it was just like the nerdy science stuff, which is cool too. And I've had a lot of people ask if like they were going to re-release like Crimson Hawk, essentially the Jim Ward new version, Gygaxian pure Greyhawk. So it was kind of cool to hear that that's something that might be coming down the pike.
Yeah.
When we were on the stream today, what was one of the greatest things, and we should totally tell James this when we see him next time, is one of the greatest things that came out of that was the guy that started pimping us to all the different discords and all the craziness. He was like the excitement when he saw Jim Ward on screen was like, is oh my god, is that Jim Ward? And when we told him who it was, he was like, he started pimping us to everybody. And then the great thing about it was he said, how do we not have 80 people watching this right now?
Yeah.
And then later on he was like, hey, listen, a lot of us subbed and followed your channel, so the next time you go live, this is going to be a lot bigger for you. So,
Ooh.
right.
And then James started talking about potentially making an anthology of Crimson Hawk to sort of buff out the world, which I understand a certain authors already started playing in fantasy worlds.
Yes, you know what, I generally steer away from anthologies at this phase of my career, but I will totally do that because I just want to.
Yeah, I think the one the one I've got out now, and I've got one more that might come out. I wrote for a friend of Walt's a while ago, so the story's done. But yeah, I think at a certain point in time, they take me longer to write short stories than a chapter does.
Yeah.
And I just don't get the follow through. It's like the audience for the short content is drying up, I think.
Well, it was never really there. Like, and the first part of your question is like Mark Twain had this to say. He said, sorry, this story is so long, I didn't have time to make it shorter. And that's the truth. A short story requires a level of mastery. But even Stephen King will tell you, and he's probably the only guy that really monetizes his short stories, but even Stephen King will tell you, like, you just do short stories because you love them. You don't make money off of them. You don't make real money off of them. You make real money off of novels. So short stories they're a wonderful art form, like they're the equivalent of Japanese bonsai, like completely meaningless. It doesn't do anything for you except enrich your inner life. And those who find that passion in those kind of things, and the dedication, the discipline, the miniaturization, all those things translate to storytelling. But you're really going to make your money as a writer, and that's the only reason to do this writing professionally, is to make money at it. Because you can just be a hobbyist writer, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you really apply yourself as a writer, in 3 to 5 years, you can make a living doing this. And if you have done that, you have acquired a following of people who like to read your books, and they depend on your books, and they depend on you to continue to release content because you're part of their enjoyment life, which makes them productive members of society and keeps society working. Believe it or not, it's that integral. So you got a part in the equation too. And they want books. And generally they want series. So the short story is like, it's a good soul thing, but I don't think they've ever really made money. And they've always been a hook into the indie community. And it's been here since I began. Let's all get together, us and 20 of my best friends, and we're all going to get the bestseller tag by all, or the New York Times bestseller tag by all doing this one. But I know the people who professionally did those anthologies, and they never made a dime off of them. They just don't do it. It's getting everybody's reader groups, fans, I hate that word, but everybody's readers to come and buy one book for that story. And the chances are most people are just going to read that story, maybe one or two others. But it's not a good use of your time. So I generally don't do it. But if it's a world project, like I was always a fan of the Thieves World series. And I think like we could do something like that for James. I think that'd be fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Although you can sometimes win nifty awards and prizes.
Awards are meaningless, said the guy who just won the dragon. And then I just, you guys, I'm not going to say this because But I'm going to tell you something.
We are on the air, you know.
I'm going to do.
Just between me, you, and our
just
thousands
me,
of
you, and
friends.
thousands of people. I am going to troll somebody with my dragon like you've never seen before. And it's going to destroy them. Just for fun, because I like to give this guy a hard time. But
I love the evil laugh at the end.
yeah. But no, it's going to, if it goes off like I want it to go off, it's going to be hilarious. But it's just for fun. It's just for fun. But awards don't do anything for you. Like, I mean, I wish they did, and they've done studies on it and everything like that. They don't translate to anything monetary. The biggest award is like that you can pay your rent. That's, or like, or whatever bill that you need to pay with writing. Like that's the award. But like awards right now, like what? To have like a group of people call you a racist because you didn't write that. I mean, they're burning J.K. Rowling's books tonight. So the biggest reward is cash.
Oh yeah. Hey, yeah. And if you look over on the chat right now,
ooh, is there somebody? Do we have a friend?
Grape Ape Texas. That was our bro that totally hooked us up today.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that, man. That was tight. That was absolutely amazing to have somebody just come out and throw that much love, man. That was fantastic.
I don't see the chat. I see chat. I see comments in StreamYard.
That's us talking to each other.
No, if you look on the main screen, so see the interface where I'm drawing.
Yes.
Yeah, you see him typing right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
maybe I need to get the app.
The closest I got to an award was I made the reading list for the 2019 Nebula, and then you watch the crap show it was, because that's the year Richard Fox was on the list, and I watched it all unfold, and I'm like, yeah, they can keep their ball. I'm just gonna stay over here with my cool Space Marines and blow shit up.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you could tell in the Dragons this year that from the top awards that they're trending the same way that killed the last award, the Hugos. So I just say don't make too much out of it. The reward is like when you get that great review from that reader or whatever. But again, the royalty check, or the royalties from Amazon, that's the biggest award. What do you
the bigger award? I actually had somebody, so like I've always been in love with like the whole Viking culture, like I just always thought it was cool. And so when I took the prayer in the reservist was a sort of conglomeration of early Christian prayers, like existing real prayers, and Viking mythology. And I had somebody reach out and they're like, yeah, I'm getting that tattooed on my arm. I'm like, holy garbage. Dude. Like that's way cooler than being on the 2019 Nebula reading list to me.
That's badass. So is that guy still in the chat right now?
Yeah, you can see. Well, he is. Okay. Yep. He's still watching us.
Yeah.
Well, hello, sir. Thank you for bringing your friends.
Yeah, Grape Ape Texas.
Brother. Let's do you ask him if I don't know, you can hear this, you can just respond, but do you play D&D? You obviously play D&D. Jim's award. Great. Let's get you on as a guest.
Oh, dude, that would rock.
Yeah, we have some slots booked. Next week is Richard Fox. I think we're trying to book Terry Shapert for October 2nd. But if you want to play, we'll get. We appreciate what you did today. We will slot you in as a guest.
We got Mikey Mason on the
right.
October 9th of the Too Fat to Troop and Ballad of a Murder Hobo fame, which is I've been trying to play with my sons too, and they're totally murder hobos. They just want to kill everything.
That's the.
I spent some time building this nice little encounter, and they were going to do all the things, and then the person they need to talk to, 5 seconds in, they cut his head off.
See, I understand that. That's why I'm going to get that barbarian blood spattered tactical patch for my plate carrier.
So speaking of barbarians, how did you lose your cavalier status? What did you do?
What did I do? Okay, so if I remember correctly, so we found this city, and there had been a big war, and it had been blown apart, and the whole city was wrecked. But somehow the castle and the king, and I was a knight errant, so I had no master. So we went into that city, and I acquired a tower. And at the same time, the king said to me, I need to rebuild my army. I will knight you. And so I took the knighting, but then somehow by buying the tower, I pissed him off, and I was no longer a cavalier. and then I did something like that shifted my alignment or something like that, and then I was just out. I was no longer a Cavalier, and it
That sounds
sucks.
very familiar.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like my military career.
No, I was gonna say, I was gonna say today on the stream,
Yeah,
JR
exactly.
had an incident.
Yes,
I'm still not totally sure what I did. I was just trying to be cautious because with Jim, you never know if you're going to turn into a snake in hand.
You cannot show. You have to show leadership, and you can't let somebody out brave you. Remember, the Cavalier in a certain way is always about show.
So
But that doesn't mean, like, with your respect, I would the adjustment I would give you is, like, and you're an NCO and you know how to lead people and things like that. I would say that the Cavalier doesn't necessarily have to attack, but he's got to be the guy who's planning the battle or organizing the battle. And then, yeah, he is the follow me thing. But I think what you're doing today is just like, oh, I'm attacking, and like, we're like, but
well,
it's
so
also
when we
hard to do with James' style because it's theater of the mind and it's not necessarily, like, tactical all the time.
So when we started doing the role in the Cavalier, one of the things we didn't do is pick a code. And so when I was showing, like, Andrew helped me roll the character, and so when I was showing Walt, he's like, you didn't pick a code though. So I started reading the Unearthed Arcana, which is the book that has all the Cavalier stuff in it. Although I'm sure if you're listening to this right now, you probably already know that way more than me. And I started reading, and it was like death before dishonor, and I'm like, I've heard that before, I'll pick it. And then after I picked it and I made it official and I submitted it to James, Walt was like, that's the hardest one to live, right?
You sit there with your Unearthed Arcana and lecture me about code. You have no code, sir.
So when we were facing the statue, I'm like, crap, we can't walk around it. I have to charge it because that's what I picked. Like, retreating is cowardice to a Cavalier.
Yeah, but just remember too that the Cavalier is a military strategist. You're an officer, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the reason that they're so hard to play isn't because they're up in everybody's face and they're just looking to pound somebody into the dirt. It's the fact that they might be leading from the front, but even though they're doing that, they're pointing over there and saying, "Get that ballista into place. You knock that tree down so that troll can't climb after us," and blah blah blah. So yeah, he's definitely...
but the problem with that is if you're trying to advance your character because you don't want to die with total party kill James Ward. With
James TPK Ward.
Yes, with a Cavalier though, if you're not advancing, if you're like even a retreating action, and you're like the last bastion to save the party as you retreat, you only get half XP. So I don't know how tight to that rule.
I would say balance that with, it's better to have half EXP than no EXP.
This is true. Luckily, I have a dwarf fighter in the wings just in case.
Yeah, but I would just try to be a battle manager as opposed to a berserker.
Yes,
fair enough.
You know what I mean? Like, you can, like, nothing says you have to charge. You can march forward, issuing orders.
Well, I tend to play. I've noticed this about myself, and I'm trying to learn to do the role playing better. I tend to play every fighter like it's Conan and it just like charge straight ahead with the battle axe, screaming to the gods.
Yeah.
That's why Prometheus resonates with me in the books.
Exactly. He's awesome. But the Cavalier is a politically savvy guy. He's not just a murder hobo. He comes from society. He knows how to lead. You're a leader. It's there's a lot of assumptions in D&D. Like, I hate when people play paladins because they play them as like obnoxious gits and trying to go to war against the party. You're not doing this, and everything like that. And it's like, that's why I'd like to really play like a Christian paladin and just be like completely like Saint Francis of Assisi.
Deus Vault, or what is that?
Deus Vault. No, not like that, because I think that's the obnoxious way. But like, Saint Francis of Assisi had this phrase or this saying, like, this one young priest came to him and was like, "Let's go into town and preach." And he's like, "Okay." And they went in and they repaired a fence and they fed some poor people and they did a sick call and they fed some pigs. And then St. Francis of Assisi is like, "Okay, time to go home now." And the other priest is like, "Okay, when are we going to preach?" And he's like, "We've been preaching all day."
So
You know, like a guy who's like a servant instead of like an obnoxious, you guys aren't all living by my thing. And I'm just saying, I use that example because it's easy to be cliche in D&D, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's some alternatives, and I think the Cavalier gets a bad rap. Is like, you're a spoiled brat who charges into battle, and it's all about your own glory. But like, I think George Washington is a Cavalier.
So, I realized that one of the things I asked because we were well. First off, Walt, can you see what the guy's saying? Because there's a long little paragraph if you want to read
it
that.
already came up, and what he said was, "Oh yeah, man, I've been playing for 30 years. Started with first edition AD&D, skipped 3 and 3.5 and 4, raising kids, etc. And then got back into it when 5e came around. Started playing Dungeon Crawl Classics. Right on, man. DCC is good stuff.
Yes.
Gary Con Online, and been playing that a lot since. I'd love to roll with y'all. Thanks for the invite. And what you should totally do is send me a note at hazardnote@gmail.com, and we'll set that up for you, brother. So like I said, we appreciated all the bandwidth today, so yeah, definitely hit me up.
So when we were talking about, like, originally it had come up, so we have a chat on the face space with the party and James, and so some of the backroom stuff happens there that, to make what we show on screen more fun. So it's sort of like gaming off screen, I guess. I don't know how normal that is.
Did you say gay man off screen?
No. I'll save that for the cavalry
because I'm out.
I'll save that for the Cab Scouts. But no, like we have almost like a session off screen, which it's a glorious thing in the age of technology. And so it came up, like he had asked about a paladin if I was for Anubis when I first embraced the dead man, and so we were talking. And it was like I just couldn't have a party with a paladin with someone like Prometheus, with the way you play him, and the way James seemed to imply would there'd be a lot of inter-party conflict, and that just doesn't sound fun, right?
Yeah.
And so when I was talking to Andrew about it, he was like, "No, you don't have to play, like you were saying, you don't have to play a paladin that way. But if you don't think you can do it, you should look at this Cavalier." And he's like, "Then, and if you've got conflict with the way Crow plays as a character, like you don't have to like fight him, you just mock him. Like, what are you, afraid to fight, or something like that?" And so when we were giving it back and forth, you sort of backed me into a corner. Like, you know what I mean? Like it would have been even funnier if, like, after I said, "Okay, I'm gonna put my shield next to yours," if you just backed out like, "Thanks."
Well, I was going to, and I thought that was a dick move, but it's a very
it would have been hilarious.
It's a very Prometheus move, but I was just looking at the overall thing, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I do this as the chaotic neutral, Prometheus, and the Cavalier is just standing there, like, I don't know, that doesn't look good for you. I guess I'm just saying it's all about appearances, but you have to balance that against stupidity. Think about how many officers, I'm gonna ride in the turret like I'm freaking Patton with the goggles on.
Oh God,
because that looks good. As opposed to like real war leaders that you knew that, that were just like a modern day Achilles, and you're like, I dig that dude. I want to be a killer like that dude. Like, I think like I said, I think Washington is a Cavalier.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then again, too, you get what do you call it? You get the. Because at the end of the day, both Cavalier and the Paladin are military leaders,
right?
And they understand, like, if you have somebody like Prometheus, you don't browbeat him and be like, listen, you need to say 20 Hail Marys and an Our Father right after. You don't do that. You take that resource that is Prometheus, and you aim him in the right direction.
Yeah. Prometheus is just a tool. Everybody's a tool to the Cavalier.
Yeah, I got to figure out a better plan than just holding our horses, because that seems like a waste of a 9. Well, used to be 10, now it's 9. A 9-man retainers, like those men at arms. Like, if I've got to share my loot with them in the church, like, damn it, they better earn it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is, like, here's one of my problems right now is, like, we've discovered a lot of interesting things to exploit and that could make our lives better. And I think James is having so much. He's like, okay, like, but think about everything that we found. We found the dwarf tower. There's a mushroom man level. There's a goblin level. We did something on level 2 We found some stuff there. Then we went into the Elf Tower. We found a portal into the world of Set. We found something else. Then we found the well, the empty well, the well of doom. And we found those cockatrice feathers. We found beholders. We found an orc tribe. Then we found the trolls. Like, and now we found today's thing, which is like we could go loot those. Like, we keep finding stuff, but like what we kind of need to do is wipe something out, like those trolls, and then that kind of solves our horse problem or stuff like that.
I just want to take my 9-man crew and just like go full cav charge on them because I just want to try it and see what happens.
I think the trolls will. I mean, trolls are
eat us alive.
they'll. I mean, like we need to screw the trolls like left and right. Like,
so the cool thing about a cavalier is you can increase your base stats, which when Andrew was explaining it.
Yeah.
And this is basically like the Church of Worden at this point because he's been sort of schooling me offline.
Yes.
But that you can increase your level. So when I got like a strength of 19, I'm like, and you read the little comparison, it's like you're as strong as a troll giant. So I kind of want to test that against like a real troll now.
Wait, are you actually that strong?
Yes.
Yeah, my character's strength is 19.
Jeez, okay.
So my base stat was like +7 to attack and +7 to hit and +7 to damage. And then for a weapon of choice, which for me is the Kopesh, the lance, and the horseman's flail. And so that's then +8 to attack and then +7 to damage. So like even without magic, he's a beast.
Yeah, I would say you're like our highest level character.
Yeah, I just made level 7 Cavalier today.
Okay, and I think Andrew's almost 8th.
Yeah, but he frustrates me because he doesn't want to take the help. I'm like, so like as an infantryman, like you're trained like from day one. Your doc is like they're like your woman. You protect them with your life, right?
Right.
Because if they're gone and then you need them, they're not there. If you get hit and they don't, they can maybe save you, right? So I kind of look at like the wizard with all his skills is sort of like our medic, right?
Right on.
And so like for me, like it just years of training, like almost a decade in the army of like, no, you protect that, and he just doesn't want to take the help, and I'm like, oh, Andrew, no, just let us take the gold, damn it.
Yeah, I think he did today.
He did better.
Yeah.
He spent so long being a GM. I think sometimes he's a little rusty on the the other side.
But he's
not in a
seriously
bad way.
good.
But...
I mean, he's upped our game. Like, I mean, he is a very cerebral player. But I would say he's a little overcautious. Because at the end of the day, it is like I was saying. At the end of the day, it is faith and dice.
Yeah, because I mean, think about it. I mean, if you were reading this as a novel or as a comic or any of that stuff, well, I sprinkled my 4 grains of dust. Oh wait, I dropped an extra grain. I'm gonna put it back in the bag. I might need that grain for later. It's like, no, man. I mean, that's. You turn that next page and you want to feel the grit of somebody's teeth hitting your armor. Yeah, after you whacked them with a mace, or you want to feel the overpressure and that dirty static of like that lightning bolt hitting your enemy, or that intense heat of that fireball going off, and like when you feel your your ears almost ready to pop, like you've gone too deep into a pool, from like a fireball going off. That's intense, that. Yeah. Even the intrigue part. Like with all the minions of set stuff, that's really cool stuff to check out. But when you're sitting there going, well, I'm going to spend the next 14 hours in contemplation, the people who are reading that, the people who are watching on the stream, that's not necessarily what they're going to want to check out.
No, so Nick has the what we call NCW, the Nick Cole wisdom. So you want to share that wisdom about the rule of cool and fun first?
Yeah, the just going over information twice is a show killer. And I've tried to. I had a call with him yesterday and just said, hey, it is a game, but at the same time, it's a show. And so like you can't, like, he's gotten better about the descriptions. Those are the. Oh,
it was a lot better. I could picture it today.
That was a lot better today, And the mapping, I felt like the mapping slowed things down a little bit. Like it's good and you need a map, but like there's a little, I don't know, I'm always pushing like forward, but like if he senses the slightest bit of danger, we don't investigate. Well, consequently, we're kind of broke in a lot of ways. If you wouldn't have gotten that spear, we'd be broke.
Yeah. And so what you, if you're listening, so, and you didn't offline, because we handle the splitting of the loot and all the boring stuff off screen, is we took the spear that we took from the statue and we sold it for loot to fund the party.
And we got 30,000 for it because it was a +3 spear, and normally you wouldn't part with a +3 spear.
Oh hell no.
But I have my +3 Kopesh, and then I think you've got your sword, and I don't think any other fighters in the group. It's just me and you.
No, and that's I mean the cleric, Drawn, which is Walt's character, he gets in there and wails. Mark Kern maybe not so. He wailed. No, well, yeah, he did fight. The clerics are kind of like, they were intended to be fighters originally.
Yeah, the only thing they don't get that fighters get is the fighters get the multiple attacks.
Yeah.
Whereas it's balanced off by spell ability.
Yeah, I think clerics should have a fighter Thaco, but they shouldn't get multiple attacks.
Right.
They don't have a fighter Thaco. They have the thief Thaco.
Because when you think about it, what was the original clerics were based on the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller.
Oh yeah, when you look at the first D&D drawings, everything like that, they're all Crusaders, because there was no Paladin yet.
And you see lots of Conan themes in there.
See, the reality is there really never should have been a Paladin character. It should have just been the cleric.
Yeah.
So the Grape Ape, the 30,000 gold was nice. We tried to get him to go up, but the blacksmith who made my Anubis plate wasn't willing to play. So we took 30,000 before it became less.
Yeah.
He asked another question. I can barely read the small screen.
So did you spend all the money yet?
So we're actually setting up some sort of like tax system for the party, because we're starting to think long term, is this party, like the game's going to go on? And this was one of Andrew's ideas that Nick sort of dove all over and said, let's make it happen. And so basically we're creating sort of like lock boxes where we put gold for research, for supplies, for whatever, and then all the players pay a tax per booty that we split up, and so that's a lot
booty.
of that's a lot of that will go there. I know Walt's character and mine have to tithe to our gods,
which is weird because in the player's handbook, the priests don't have to do that. It's just the paladins.
So, well, the tithing helps my character grow. But then on top of the tithe, I have to, in case you had missed some of the earlier episodes, I'm trying to create a temple to Anubis. So I have to raise 50,000 or 58,000 gold pieces, and then fight to clear the land, to set up the banner, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that gold disappeared real quick.
Well, James, that's James's specialty, is making you not get successful. Like, like just basically coming up with new ways to spend your money.
Yeah.
Horses went from 50 gold to 250. I think he forgot one time he raised them to 750 on us.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. And he'll be like, oh, that's going to cost you money for that. And that's money there. And, he said to me the other day, you going to join the Thieves Guild? And I'm all, yep. And he's like, that's 1,000 gold, and,
Nope.
like, okay.
I did feel like a baller today when he was like, I got the horses, I'm going to make it rain.
You did, man. You made it rain in the stables.
So
sadly, you're not the first man to have ever done that.
No, I'm not. Those horses get ridden a lot.
So what should we attack next? Like, what's the next thing we should tackle?
Well, look at it like, okay, imagine that this is a war, or that you're a conqueror in Alexander the Great, and you're beginning to understand the political situation. There's a city, and no one really goes outside the city, and you kind of got free reign, and there's power. Like, what would you do? What would you go for?
So if it was me, we know there's something going on in the harbor that's mad. We know that we're not done with the temple with the mummies. but we have until the next full moon before that's a problem again. I would suggest we go to the harbor and instead of just go fight, slay, steal the loot, and level up, we take that and go talk to whoever like the mayor is or the city council and be like, look, we got rid of these mummies for you and we didn't ask for a dang thing. And now we're clearing the harbor for you and it's time for you to start paying for our armor or something.
What would you do, Walt?
That sounds like a good idea. Maybe petition the state, the free city of Crimson Hawk, to start sponsoring. Because I mean, we're not. It's like being in the Cavalier, like the Cavalier. That Cavalier expects a certain type of quartering. Right in the Unearthed Arcana, it says, if that Cavalier is operating in an area, he expects to be like housed, have his people fed. He can just show up and posse comitatus all over the place and do what he wants.
Prima nocta.
They are. Explain what the prima nocta is.
So it's the belief, and I don't think it was ever actually enforced, but it was on the books in the Norman conquest, where the Lord got to breach the maidenhead, shall we say, and claim the first night of a marriage for himself.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah, I don't think they put things on the books for no reason.
Maybe we just don't know. That's one of the areas where we only know so much, and then the other part of history, which is why I find the D&D the way it's written so fascinating, because it does draw like from existing history so much that you can see even parallels, is some of the stuff that they just don't write down because they assume you already know. And then the farther we get from everything, like the farther it, the less we know. So like we know that, men and women did certain things, that babies were made. We don't necessarily know what their medical procedures for delivering that birth was, say 3,000 years ago, or any other thing, because they didn't write it down because they assumed you knew.
Right. So
or for instance, like the Battle of Cannae.
You want to become a fifth level midwife, is what you're saying.
Right. Or we know when Hannibal circled the Roman army the first time and they slaughtered, and you look at the sheer numbers that were involved.
Yeah.
And we normally you would say, okay, they leveled that up, like they massed those numbers up to make themselves look better. But when you're losing, you would want to lower the number so it doesn't look as bad. But then you can actually like track. My bachelor's degree was in ancient and medieval history. And you could track like the actual receipts to buy new stuff to re-outfit the army, and you just look at the numbers, and like every Carthaginian soldier would have to kill like something like 20 men just to make the numbers work for that slaughter based on the losses. And you start thinking like what that means to the body. They didn't write any of that down because they just assumed people would know the story.
I'll ask you this: Scipio or Scipio?
Scipio.
See, I prefer Scipio. Scipio and Scipio make him sound like an idiot, but Scipio is kind of cool.
So that's actually because I'm a Roman history fan. That's where Lance Scipio came from. Like that's the main character in my first series.
Yes.
But when James was like, "Oh, Scorpio, I like it," because he misread it, and I'm like, "How did I not go there the whole damn time?"
Hey, so before we go any deeper, we have some questions coming out of the stream, and so I would love, Grape Ape Texas was like 30,000 gold pieces, nice, and asked us if we spent it all. But now we have, and it's a weird blue, so I'm having trouble reading it. Author J Mac, it looks like he's like, yes, you guys are on Twitch, total followage. But then Grape comes back and says, hey, so apologies for my lack of knowledge on who everyone is. Just kind of popping in today and not familiar with all the players. I see somebody drawing, perhaps an illustrator, and the title says sci-fi writers playing D&D. Are all you guys published authors of RPG stuff? I think some introductions are in order, starting with Prometheus.
Yes, sir. And I do know who J Mac is, and he is an author too, and he's a very cool guy.
Oh, cool.
But basically, Grape Ape, we are all science fiction writers. We're all published writers. We're all in the indie community. Some of us were in the trade pub community. And basically, we all play games together because we like to. So myself and JR and soon to be Walt, who writes in other universes, we all write in a science fiction series called Galaxy's Edge, and Galaxy's Edge just won a Dragon Award. It's one of the #1 best-selling Space Marine science fiction novels. So if you like Star Wars, it's basically Star Wars with the serial numbers filed off. It's very Clone Wars. It's very Mandalorian. It's very cool. If you like the Mandalorian vibe, it's very like we wrote a book. We wrote a series of books, 3 books called Tyrus Rex Contracts and Terminations.
Yes.
Very bounty hunter. You would love that. JR wrote a novel and he's writing the sequel to it in the Galaxy's Edge universe, and that's called The Reservist. And it's just about a badass guy who goes off to war and excels through leadership and virtue and honor and multiple bayonet strikes. And he kills and makes the grass go. And we're all veterans, the 3 of us here. And we enjoy telling military science fiction stories. JR has a book outside the Galaxy's Edge universe that he's proud of. It's a couple of books. What have you written, JR?
So I have, when I first started writing, I actually did it in a therapy class at the VA, the Veterans Administration Hospital. And it was just trying to help process PTSD through creative arts. And everyone else was writing actual like memoirs or fantasy. That just was a little too visceral for my experience. I needed that separation. So I started writing a fantasy series and a sci-fi series. And the instructor was a college professor that was running it. And I can't remember her name for the life of me, but when I said, I thought I had to live life more to be an author, she's like, you went to 2 war zones. What more do you want? And so at the same time, I just started reading again, because with brain damage, it's difficult. I have to magnify the heck out of everything. But I found the Kindle, and being able to magnify it on that was like a game changer. And I found Tim Taylor's Human Legion series, which is amazing. I recommend it. It's very dry British style, but it's still an excellent story. And so I started writing him back, because one of the things he got wrong, which is one thing a lot of civilians got wrong, was every rifle, every weapon was interchangeable. And to a point, that's true. Like as a rifleman, I could pick up any rifle and hit what I was aiming at. But my rifle was different because it was mine. Right? It had personality. It was mine. I named it everything.
Yeah.
And so I wrote him that. He's like, why don't you do that? And at the time I was just like writing on his blog. Like I was using this cheesy handle Iron Mike. That's the infantry thing. And we were going back and forth, and I started trying to do his wiki for him. I suck at wiki, by the way. It's too damn hard. And I said, you need to write this side story and this side story and this side story. I think Tim just wanted me to shut up. He's like, why don't you write it? And so I ended up writing in his world. And so he left. The main series left the planet at book 1, and I wrote the story of what happened to the people left behind, and it's called the Sleeping Legion series. My character, Lance Scipio, was named after my main character from that series, which James redubbed Scorpio, which how did I not think of that the first time? I mean, Jimmy, talk about lost potential there. And so I wrote that series, which is finished. It tied back into Tim's series, which I'm proud of, because I wrote that that was literally the first thing I ever wrote, was the first thing that got published. So
Yeah, that wasn't on a bathroom wall.
Which wasn't on a bathroom wall, and
wasn't about Chuck Norris.
Yeah. It's a long way to the mess hall. Flush twice.
Yeah. And Walt is a game designer and he's a writer too. So what do you got, Walt?
And an illustrator.
And an illustrator.
Yeah, we got he's starting
and a martial artist.
Yeah, full contact Scrabble is my jam. So 2004, I stopped drawing comics and stuff, and I started this little company called Hazard Studio, so that people who wanted to get into comics and illustration for role-playing game and stuff like that, they could have an avenue into doing it. And so we ran that for a number of years, and then we got my wife is sleepily saying hello. Then we got we started doing some some writing, RPGs. We bought 2013. We bought Supers, the role-playing game, and then just started really jamming out some products at that point. And we've been really, really successful. And I really wanted to get back into the fiction side of things. And though I love to draw, I really love to put the pencil to the page. Writing has been very therapeutic, very great way to kind of like get out of my own head a little bit. So
yes,
I'm looking forward to seeing what other people think of me scribbling.
Yeah.
And it's hazardstudio.net. I repeat, hazardstudio.net. Check them out. Got lots of great products. It's fun stuff.
Yeah, and each week, like the other people that are on there that you saw on there, there's a guy, M.A. Rothman. He writes thrillers. Primordial Fear is a book that he wrote. And then the guy playing Arlen, the character, it's just a character and a cleric. That's actually Mark Kern, and he's kind of a famous dude in the world of video gaming. He basically developed and was the project lead on World of Warcraft. And you can find him on Twitter. He's always talking about gaming issues and stuff like that. He's a really great guy. He's just thrown his hat in. He's developing a new mecha game. And
Don't you threaten me with a good time.
Yeah.
Is it
exactly.
computer, like a electronic game, or is it, okay.
No, like a keyboard.
Cool.
What did they call that? PC.
PC?
And because I'm a console gamer, but he has the full on PC, and it's mecha, and it's really cool. But he's like, the way him and I linked up is he's like, he saw that I, had some success as a writer. And so he's like, you show me what to do to write. I'm like, okay. And he'd already written and he had a huge writer as a mentor. The guy who wrote, I think, Sword of Shannara, or
oh really?
Or maybe it was Kevin Reynolds. Somebody was his mentor.
Was it Terry Pratchett?
No, I don't think it was that. But maybe it was Kevin J. Reynolds. But he didn't write Sword of Shannara. But and he came to me for like, how do I actually publish things? Because I'm more of an indie writer, not a trade pub writer, and those are the skills that you kind of need. So he's really coming along. His stuff, and he's also writing a cyberpunk series. Nice. Which is a smart move with the cyberpunk game coming out and kind of the resurgence of cyberpunk stuff. So we've all got a lot of books, and we should really, like, each of us should have a graphic card that we give to Walt and plug some, books throughout because we like, even short stories, you can plug that, like, just, a graphic to show it and some art. But like, I've written post-apocalyptic fiction that's been well received. I've
Old
written
Man
some
in the
cyberpunk.
Wasteland.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah.
We got a new thing coming out called Forgotten Ruin. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh my god!
Which
just
if you love D&D.
And Andrew, who is just an old school gamer that runs one of the largest, longest running gaming guilds, who's also published some short stories and is working on more. If he ever decides to retire and get a normal sleep schedule.
Yeah, that guy's crazy. Happen. I mean, like, he's got some crazy madman interest, and he's such an interesting cat. And then every week we try to have on a special guest. So like last week we had a guy named Larry Correa. This week it was Chris Fox, and these are people like who have big platforms who are writing. We're gonna have some other cool guests coming on, and so we're just kind of but basically the premise is, I think we just want to play D&D. So it could easily be called like Garbage Collectors Playing D&D, but it just turns out that we're all science fiction writers.
Hell yeah.
So going back to the tactics of the whole thing.
Were there any more questions, Walt, for us?
No, what do you call it? Great Babe Texas is like very, very, very cool. And thank you, congrats on the Dragon Award.
Thank you, sir.
And then, Great Babe, definitely check out Old Man in the Wasteland and Soda Pop Soldier. Those titles are tight.
Those are fun.
He was saying that he loves apocalypse stuff, so yeah, definitely check him out.
Yeah, Old Man in the Wasteland. If you like that, I based that on. I took the Old Man in the Sea and said, well, what if I put it in Fallout in the video game?
Right, and just loved it because Old Man in the Sea is my favorite book of all time. So like when I read Old Man in the Wasteland, I'm like, dude.
Yeah. When I got out of the army, like, I was in kind of a strange place. Go figure. And
go say we all.
Go figure. And I fell off a roof drinking and busted my arm.
Ooh.
And so I was chewing Vicodin for the whole summer, and I finally sat down and read Old Man and the Sea and like a Conan novel every day. And because that's all you can do when your arm is in a strange position. And I finally, like, that Old Man in the Sea finally, like, made sense to me, and I understood where I was at in life. And the thing that you take away from the Old Man in the Sea is you're not beaten until you admit that you're beaten. And as long as you want to fight for the fish and keep fighting the fish, and then you want to swing the paddle at the sharks, and then the sharks eat the paddle, and you want to go after them with your pocket knife, you're not beaten until you say you're beaten.
All right, there, Ahab.
Yeah, I mean, that was just an important lesson to me at that time, because I felt kind of, after I got out of the army, I felt a little beaten, And there's a moment where you can feel a little done, and that's just not the truth. Shakespeare says the acts of man are seven, and that, like, you probably have 2 or 3 different careers, and 6 or 7 wives, and no, just joking. But it was an interesting thing. So it was fun to set that in the post. And it's interesting. Here's another thing: when people go back and look at a lot of the early D&D stuff, and you read through the Dungeon Master's Guide, and you look at the old modules and stuff like that, a lot of people say that Gary Gygax was heavily influenced by the post-apocalypse. And that's like the nature of the world. Like, it fits better for D&D because so much of the world is unknown. And so whether it's not necessarily, maybe a modern apocalypse, but somehow, like, the setting was very apocalyptic because there were ruins. So much was unknown. Maybe they had the wizard version of a nuclear war, and that's why you're kind of out exploring. So it's weird, but D&D and the post-apocalypse kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
Speaking of Shannara, I didn't realize until I reread it that was actually a post-apocalyptic story too.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and if you ever read Gene Wolfe, who's very super highfalutin, it's really hard to read Gene Wolfe fantasy, but
the Torturer series.
Yeah, that's like very, like, you got to have all your brain cells working to read that. And there's this one moment that you realize it's not medieval history.
Yes.
Or medieval fantasy, when you figure out that he's looking at a picture of an astronaut.
Right? That's stuck to a TV.
And you're like, oh, this is not in medieval fantasy world. This is in the post-apocalyptic future.
Right?
Yeah.
So strategy, now that we've got that covered and answered their strategery. So we shall endeavor not to charge straight ahead, despite your relentless mockery of poor Scorpio.
No, Scorpio's good.
He's battle tactics.
Yeah, he's just a war leader. But you are the tank too, so that's a problem also. But it would be fun to hurl some ranged fire and some ranged spells, and coordinate an attack. If I can get behind something, I can backstab, and that's fun.
Yeah.
So I actually am thinking that in the future, like, I didn't realize I would get so many retainers because I was expecting the minimum level, because for a while the dice were just not going in my favor. And so when I rolled the top level, I'm like, sweet, I'll take it. But that changes things, because we expected like maybe 2 people to like hold the horses and take them back for us. And now we've got enough we could do that and still take some with us.
See, I think we could take your guys down and burn the orcs.
Yes.
And steer clear of the beholder. But we could maybe do something about the beholder.
Man, that gem that we left there is calling to me, though.
Yeah, or the orcs who've got their hands on it. But I was going to say this. Okay, so basically, Jim set it up like this: like, there's gray mist, there's blue sand all over the place, and now everybody wants you to go and solve the thing. Well, why did we go solve it?
Yes.
And then there was no reward. When I went and I said, well, what about a reward? And they're like, great, thanks for doing that for us. So when this event happens in 2 weeks, like he said, you're going to want to go back down here, and there's going to be werewolves and everything.
Did he say werewolves?
Yeah.
Yes.
What I think, think we should say, we should just do something else and let his event go down and be like, that's not our concern. We don't care. We are murder hobos.
Show me the money.
Just choke on it. Like, we're going to do our thing. And I'm sorry your city's getting ravaged. Like, hey, here's an idea. You could hire someone to do something about that.
Or we could just go into the mountains to clear the temple for Horus.
Yeah, like we should allow a need to arise so that we can then be filled. Like we just kind of marched off to do it, and then when I said, oh well, the city they're all upset about it and everything like that, or there was no pay coming our way, and that's Jim's kind of crafty like that. But I think if you bargain or whatever, you don't do what he wants you to do. Like, I would say,
Walt bargained really well for the per person instead of.
Oh yeah, that was great bargaining.
What's that?
But you have to bargain with Jim. Like, otherwise he'll just like let you make an awful deal, which we kind of did for going to get the mummies, instead of saying like, yeah, that's a bummer that happened to the docks. How's that our problem?
Oh, you talk about the dwarves, Jr.
Yeah. When you were like,
That was great.
that's for you. What about your buddies?
Right?
We basically get 1 million in free gold out of there,
Hell yeah!
and that crazy gem.
Great Babe Texas is saying, I think it's fate that we found each other. I'm looking through your websites and immediately went to Ink Slingers for Hire. Oh, I think he's looking at Hazard Studio. I've written DCC modules and I'm days away from submitting to Goodman Games and to get it approved for third-party publishing license. Oh, nice. Way to go, Great Babe. I've already commissioned a couple of artists for art, which I am less than proficient, but have no idea what I'm doing with layout and could really use help there. Oh yeah, man, that's my jam. That's what Hazard Studio was set up to do, was to launch guys into their first publishing endeavors and give people who are just starting out that brace bar if you start to lose your balance in one area of publishing or another, to where you can grab onto something and say, hey, can I have a little help with this? So yeah, man, hit me up, definitely.
Yeah, and JR can draw pictures of women with boobs.
Well, stick figures with boob.
The disturbing part is they never have heads.
So JR, did you see the
I love
picture?
to make JR giggle. That's the best part.
Did you see the picture I sent so far?
Yeah, I saw what you sent me. That's dope. I like it.
Oh, did you finish the picture?
Not yet. But, let me send that to you now, Nick, because it doesn't look as
So what I say we should do is we should either go wipe out those orcs with JR's troops.
Well, I get more because I leveled up.
Yeah, or go after that undead paladin in the graveyard. And what I was thinking is there's 2 ways we could kill that dude. We go in again and we line the halls with mirrors.
Oh yeah.
And we get him to chase us out in there and flood his tomb with mirrors. You know, reflecting sunlight down in there. Or we go in there and we sit until about 20 minutes before dawn, maybe 15. And then we...
Uh-oh. Everybody still there?
Here. Did we lose
I think we
Prometheus?
lost we lost Nick. No, he was right in the middle of his plan.
And that's how you solve the mysteries of the universe.
Oh my god. Yep, that'll do it.
So this is because I actually had a buddy of mine that lost his sight in Iraq, and so they're actually I follow Grunt Style because they have some pretty cool clothes.
Hell yeah.
I'm not skinny enough to fit in their stuff yet because they don't make fat people clothes, but I'm working on that. Thank you, Richard Fox, and this intermittent fasting, which is killing me. But they actually released a sci-fi wing of their clothing where they've got stuff, and we shared it in the Galaxy's Edge Facebook, and I'll probably share it on mine. But that one I sent you, they're donating $1 from each sale to the Southwestern Guide Dogs, which provide service dogs for veterans.
Hell yeah.
So, which is cool because also I think, dogs are amazing, and so
well,
is there any way you could share that or no?
Hell yeah. Oh, right now?
Yeah, is it on this one too? Because it's just such a cool thing.
Well, people just heard it.
So it's the Rise of the Republic from Grunt Style.
Right on. So what I'll do is later on when this goes up to YouTube, I'll put it there too, and we have Nick back.
I got kicked.
We don't judge.
I said
so
inappropriate.
So you actually upset James Ward. He's watching in the wings. You don't know, but he's using his mighty total party kill powers to monitor.
Okay, so that he basically when I mocked his when I did his voice, yeah, the Bruce ant.
I just knew I was going to turn into an ant again. What is it with ants and tentacles? Oh my goodness!
I know exactly. So my final plan is, when James says, "Oh, all this bad thing is happening to my city," we just go, "Well, how's that our problem?" We're gonna go kill some orcs, go kill the undead paladin.
I'm so down with this.
I dig it. I say we could go for the trolls, or we can just explore the city. Just because so far we've only gone to ruins and all the puzzles and the traps and stuff. It could be cool just for a change of pace. But I definitely think if we're going to go clear out the city for them, we negotiate with someone to be like, how about a little something something in return for us risking our lives?
Exactly.
And maybe we could talk
I
them
like that
into.
photo, Walt. That looks really great.
Oh, thanks.
We got there.
Maybe
So far.
maybe we could talk them into covering some of the startup costs for our temples, Walt.
Well, somebody's got to pay for it.
Oh my goodness, 58,000 gold is daunting.
I think that because you're Egyptian now, like you should have your head shaved, and you should wear makeup.
What's the old black and white movies? You go full like that.
No,
Although I'm not sure
no,
how accurate.
no,
that is.
the Egyptians shaved their heads, but then they also used eyeliner and all that kind of stuff.
Hell yeah.
The kohl makeup, KOHL.
Yep.
But that's they did that. Like look at like the Mummy.
JR is going to have a makeup session before every adventure.
Exactly.
He'll have these orcish slave girls.
Ooh.
Oh,
Oh baby.
Don't ask questions.
Don't ask questions.
So you do have to wonder where some of these races came from and why there aren't half dwarfs. There's half everything else. Everything's bone and everything, but there's not half dwarfs.
Well, there is a little something if you're into something like that, which first of all, therapy, but second, God, when was it? I think
he's already drawing stick figure boob women with no heads.
I mean, so all I need to do is add a beard, and they could be what? They could be dwarven women.
So I think it was 91. It was just after I got in the army, and Brahms' artwork was just exploding everywhere. You could see this guy. He was drawing Conan. He was drawing like all these crazy, like really. He was doing a lot of the Frazetta looking stuff. It was just crazy. So. It was TSR back then hired him to do a setting called Dark Sun.
Yes.
And Dark Sun was the apocalypse. It was a D&D world that had suffered like this crazy apocalypse and basically turned everything into a wasteland.
Yeah.
I think Grape Ape Texas is saying it's too hard to get past all their hair that they have, talking about the orcish makeup artists. So there was a race in Dark Sun called the Mule. It was MUL, and it was the product of a dwarf and a human. But because of the poisoned land and stuff like that, you didn't get like this like little half dwarf, like this pygmy human that was kind of just misshapen or whatever. You got this like 7-foot tall behemoth of a man that was just like, and they were always male. They were always completely bald, and they were just immensely strong. They were kind of like half giants almost, and they did. I read the novels back when they came out, and Rikus was the main guy in those novels, and he was a mule. And it was just a neat way to handle it. It was like, look, if these two races fell in love, and nature took its course, the poisoned land that everybody lived in would just continue to punish everybody, including for making the wrong, what the land figured was a wrong choice. So yeah, that was craziness.
My favorite half thing, and when I was a kid, I had a game shop that I played D&D at, where I played with everybody, and then I went to a Christian school, and the smartest kid in school, kind of reminds me of this Andrew guy. He would do exactly what you're doing tonight, Walt. Like during PE, he was the kind of guy who just sat around and drew like, here's my mercenary team from Soldier of Fortune.
Hell yeah.
They'd all be holding like Mac 10s, that kind of shit. And so he's like, when I come to my house and play D&D, and he was Swiss, and he had, I'm not kidding, he had like a 4.5 grade average.
Jesus.
And he spoke like 3 different languages, everything like that. So I go over to his house, And he's like, okay, let's make a party. And I'm like, well, okay. And he makes me roll up 7 different characters, and he runs them all, does all the math, rolls all the dice. We play Caverns of Thracia, which is an old Judges Guild module.
Oh
It's one
yeah.
of the first mega dungeons. It's a lot of fun. And he says, you need 2 fighters. And I go, okay. And he's like, you should make half ogre fighters.
Oof.
And so if you ever read the dragon article on half ogres, I had a paladin of Anubis and I had 2 half ogre fighters. And one had 1800 strength and the other had 1899. And what made them badasses is they could use 2-handed weapons as 1-handed weapons, and they could pull strength bows.
Those were in Dragon Magazine, right?
Right, exactly. So you basically had Death Dealer. You just had this total murder machine that was firing a strength bow at like +6 damage, and was using a great axe or a 2-handed sword as a single-handed weapon, and still had a shield. And those things just murdered their way through dungeons.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was my favorite half thing.
We need that.
That's what I was thinking about doing. Like, if we were going to make secondary characters, I was probably going to make like just a half ogre murder machine.
Nice.
So that was one of the things, like with gaming. So like I did 2 sessions of 3.5, but this was right when the Bush election was going, and not to get political, Nick, but they thought because I was in the army, I must have been voting for the wrong side, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So they kicked me out of the party after 2 sessions, and so that my gain, because found better friends. But so like that was my one experience until with my son. And then we did the 5e at one of the game stores where they have like the Adventure League or whatever.
Yep.
And I was learning. It was kind of cool, and they were using the actual grid maps and figures. But my son wanted to be a thief because
these are awesome.
That's just the kind of kid he is. And then they wouldn't let him steal as a thief. Like, he couldn't just like pickpocket or use his thief skills. And he's like, what's the point of this? And it was because of all the restrictions they put on things with the 5e for the Adventurers Guild, at least.
Yeah.
Like, it took out the ability of you to play your characters. Like, what fun was that? So we sort of stopped going. And now I'm trying to learn something simple so we can do it as a family.
And First E is like Grape mentioned, Dungeon Crawl Classics. Like, whatever it is, it's great, but like, everything now is stupid, and I'll tell you why. I bought that game, Sea of Thieves, and you play a pirate, right? And we all know what pirates do. They go and they get a boat and they steal from other people. That's basically the definition of a pirate. So I go into the first tavern and it says the rules of community pirating. You can never make fun of someone's gender. You can never make fun of this and everything like that. And it says, and pirates never steal. And I'm like, and you've missed the point of being a pirate completely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like, that's like, and so how they mitigate is like, you're not a thief, you're a rogue, but like, no, I mean, like, okay. So when we played that Temple of Elemental Evil, that was a huge, like, okay, so the Temple of Elemental Evil is originally a module that starts off with a module called Village of Hamet.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then I think there's another module, and then there's Temple of Elemental Evil, and then it leads to like the Dragon series. Well, like, I want to say like 85 maybe, Gary Gygax made like a full, like one of the first like full thick mega dungeon modules, like glossy, like almost like anime comic book thing, not like, I mean, just that level of thickness, called the Temple of Elemental Evil. So we had probably like 15 kids playing, and my best friend was playing a thief, and I was playing that cleric. I was a cleric of Poseidon.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so they said, like, we were doing the party accounting and everything like that, and we were going through it. And so my friend was like, he was very like upright, upstanding guy in real life. And like, he was like track guy. And so like, he was tall, and everybody's like, we trust him because he's Randy. But what they weren't saying to themselves is, yeah, but Randy's playing a thief. So I'm the cleric, and I'm like, I think chaotic neutral is like, or lawful neutral, whatever. And so I go to him, I'm like, you're the thief, dude, and you're doing accounting. So I have an idea. Let's create an imaginary share. and then let's split that. And so I'm telling you that story because I forgot why. It's getting late. But stealing.
D&D stealing.
Stealing. You know, like that was half the fun, and we ripped that party off for everything. And so when I got assassinated, it was probably I probably deserved it. But that was that. I mean, like that's half the fun of D&D is like of stealing, assassinating, dealing. I mean, I remember I've been in parties where if the thief picked the chest, they kind of got first choice on the item because they're masters of sleight of hand. They're going to grab that gem and pocket it first, which I would never do because I like a nice party, but I'm just saying it's either a living, breathing world and pirates never steal.
Ugh.
I think they're a generation that was screwed up watching Jake and the Neverland Pirates and the Peter Pan, where the pirates were like, oh, they're not so bad.
Yeah.
Just grumpy, crotchety old men. I'm like, no, pirates were pretty nasty dudes.
Yeah.
Like
Johnny Depp did a lot to heal the pirate image to what it really is. But at the end of the day, he also did a lot wrong where the pirate's actually the hero. But no, pirates are horrible people.
Well, for a while. Some of the pirates did the letters of marque, and they were basically mercenaries. But I would argue at that point they're no longer really pirates,
right?
Privateers.
Yeah.
But when they were privateers, but yeah, it's this I don't know, smoothing over all the rough edges of history. I love reading about Roman history, but then you watch them and you write about the Romans and no, you need to up the brutal factor by about a major by 1,000 or something.
Yeah, because
that's realistic.
There's a reason you use the term "go Roman" on something,
right?
But
the term "decimate" became a thing for a reason.
Yeah, but look at what we've done now. Let's get political. Even Trump said it today. Sorry, I ruined the podcast. I said Trump, but soldiers are not police people. They're soldiers, and soldiers are designed to do a certain thing. And in modern history, what our society has said, no, soldiers are police, and it's that's how a lot of soldiers got killed, being police.
Mm-hmm.
So it is this softening, and it is this these games of changing the meaning of everything. But I don't think that serves anybody, because you can play with all the meanings of things and everything like that. But what happens if Jason and I sell Galaxy's Edge to Amazon and they make it in a movie? And I and Nicole get on my new yacht that I just bought, and we're cruising around the Caribbean, and some pirates attack us. Am I going to shout off the forward bow, and pirates never steal?
You're going to say, tally ho!
No, I am going to return fire with all the weapons I bought.
Can you say Leroy Jenkins before you charge?
Leroy Jenkins.
Before I ram their little ship with my mega yacht? I don't know, but I know that when you play with the truth, people get hurt. And so, just let pirates be pirates. Let people steal or not steal. I don't know.
In the chat, author J Mac is saying, those are more like guidelines, and you're not Hugh Howey.
That's for sure. I am not Hugh Howey. I thought J Mac got into it with Hugh Howey a week or two ago. But yeah, it's.
So does anybody have cool or party names that's watching? Because we've still got to come up with that.
No, I think we should totally cobble together. What do you call it? Some of the ones that were suggested today, because they had a bunch of them that were pretty neat.
We should also because we are a Galaxy's Edge, three of us here, and Jason and Absentia, shouldn't we kind of maybe do a nod towards that?
Absolutely.
The Legion of Hobos. Legion of Death.
I was just going to say, when you said Legion of Hobos, I was like, did he just say Legion of Hogus? Because I'd be into that.
Legion of Hogus. No. What was it? Is my plate carrier smaller? Am I just fat?
No, did my plate carrier shrink, or did I gain 15 pounds? That's what you said. So awesome. The other cool thing is Walt's put me on some of these some of these other podcasts that are doing the Greyhawk, like the old school stuff.
Yeah.
So there's like the Blue Box RPG people, which I think is a family that's doing it, right, Walt?
Yeah, I could have sworn that's what he said.
They need to be panel vanned.
And then there's some other like parties that are doing it, so that could be cool too, to sort of cross promote the older, cooler stuff. Like having some of them on ours as guest stars too. Like maybe invite their DMs who are normally probably not getting to play,
Yeah.
and giving them the chance to just sit back and be a player.
Yeah.
For
And
us,
have like Jim say like, I want him to have a weapon, and the Edwardian weapon. I'm like, you don't want that weapon.
Great.
I'm like, what is your intent, James? Just humiliate people? Like, now you look like a duck because you took a swing with this. Now you're purple. Like, is the person having fun? You doing this to them? I don't know.
Grape Ape is saying, do you guys need a name just for the adventure or for the group continuing on forever? And then he said a lot of the names we were coming up with were just related to you guys getting your asses kicked by the bunnies.
We need
for
it.
the party. For the party.
Yeah, we need it like the Avengers, or we need a super. We're not superheroes, obviously.
The proctologists.
But, yeah, we need something. Like I said, that kid who was running D&D for me in the 80s, he would have drawn our party and called us the Death Dealers.
Hell yeah.
And that'd have been cool.
I talked to Larry Correa several times after the podcast.
Ooh.
And he said that if we wanted to use the name of his military merc series as our party name, he's totally down with that.
What's
that's Dead Six.
Dead Six.
That's cool.
Yeah, so
Why not?
Yeah, he said he'd be totally down with that, but at the same time, too, having a Galaxy's Edge throwback, I'm always going to default to Galaxy's Edge myself. I don't know about you guys.
Contractors and Terminators.
Oh my God, that's just. Now, I'm going to need a moment. As JR said, alone in my bunk.
The Fist of Oba.
The Fist of Oba.
That sounds like weirdly pornographic and gay.
Look, all right, don't judge me just because I moonlight as Chuck Tingle.
What do we shout after a battle? You've been fisted.
Oh, great, we've killed JR. I think Nick might need a Heimlich.
I just want to do it now. We should do it now just so he has to shout back. You've been fisted.
Holy shit. I think you guys are broken.
Oh, now I'm coughing.
Oh.
Well, on that note, we'll probably call it a podcast for our DnD After Dark. Hey, Grape Ape and author J-Mac, thanks for coming out, guys. And seriously, why don't you guys hit me up at hazardnote@gmail.com, and we'll get some stuff set up, and we'll J-Mac.
We also have a Facebook group if you want to hang out and nerd out over all things D&D. It's sci-fi writers playing old school D&D. Very creative. All the other cool stuff was taken. Curse them. So if you want to hit us up, join there. It's a small group right now, only 23 of us, and probably half of that are people that are affiliated with the show so far. but it'll grow. It'll grow.
It'll grow.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
You'll grow into it.
Hey guys, have a great night. Cheers.